open the meeting, call it to order, and we do have 3 sets of minutes to take care of tonight, the 2 that are relatively quick, I think. And so we have the minutes of June 13th, 2020 to take care of. Is there a motion to approve?
I would move we approve them subject to modification.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And we have just 1 page. If there's no corrections to it, then any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes of June 13th, 2020, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. We've done that one. The next are the minutes of the June 16th, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Move we approve subject to modification.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And page 1. Page 2. And page 3. Hearing no corrections, all those in favor of approving the minutes of June 16th, 2020, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. We have done that one as well. Moving on to the minutes of June 24th, 2020. We have a new copy of those that was sent to us by email yesterday. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move we approve subject to modification.
Is there a second?
Second.
So here are no corrections or modifications. All those in favor of approving the minutes of June 24th, 2020, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. We've done all the minutes. So we could move on then to public comment. Is there anyone in the waiting room wishing to make any public comment tonight on any issue?
Terry, I don't see anyone signifying that in the chat at this moment.
Okay. So, seeing no one willing to make public comment at this time, well, I suspect we will later on. We can move on to interview and appointments if Chelsea Levis is on the line.
I will get her connected with us momentarily.
Okay.
Chelsea, I'm going to just promote you to a panelist, so we'll be able to see you and hear you in just a moment. I see Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea, just unmute, please.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you very much. So thank you for coming for your interview tonight. You're interested in the Historic and Architectural Advisory Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you could just give us a little bit of a brief outline of your history, what prompted you to want to be a member of this committee, and just a very brief statement.
Sure. So my husband and we have 2 little kids. We moved to Williston 2 years ago. I grew up in Essex and moved away for college and then returned here, and we chose to buy a house here in Williston. And so we've been here for a couple of years, and it's been in the back of my mind to be more present in the community and just trying to figure out the best way to do that. I'm interested in the history of a town and also just the idea of planning. And I bring no professional expertise to it, but I talked with Emily and Matt a bit about what that would look like, and it seemed like the hack committee was a good place to learn and to contribute to town planning, and so that was of interest.
Thank you very much. So you do understand it's an advisory committee, so whatever is proposed by that committee may or may not get enacted, but it's a good place to start.
Okay.
One of the questions that's always asked, and the person who asked it isn't here tonight, is that how would you see a conflict of interest with anything that you might be involved in privately? How would you recognize it, and what would you do about it?
So if somebody brought something to the hack for review,
Right.
I think a conflict of interest would be anything that probably in my life would be around me, like in my neighborhood. I don't work for a company or anything that is doing anything in the town. And I think I would just need to bring that to the committee and recuse myself from those conversations.
Good, thank you. So other questions from the board members?
Not a question as much as a comment, Chelsea. I think it's great that you're getting involved. I saw that you are the mother of 2 small children, and I have nothing but praise and respect for you for taking on something in addition to that at this particular time. I imagine your schedule is rather pressed, plus working from home. So thanks for the energy you're going to bring.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have a great husband who's like all on board. So
Is he on? Is he listening tonight?
no, he's putting the kids to bed.
Oh, he missed you saying that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
Other
Chelsea-
questions?
Chelsea, it's
Go ahead.
Gordon. I'm just curious. You'd mentioned that you're intrigued with the history of the town. Is there a particular, building or part of town that really interests you for where it came from and how it came about, or just in general?
Just in general, when we moved here, I read that book that the library has about the history of Williston, of the town. And I think growing up here and not having read any history of Vermont, and I don't remember that even being a part of our schooling, honestly, probably was, but as an adult, it's been intriguing to learn about how Williston really was part of kind of the epicenter of Vermont at a stage in its lifetime. So I like the historic village is intriguing to me, and the buildings and the history behind that. But yeah, I think it's more of a general interest.
Great. No, thanks again for throwing your hat in the ring. These are very trying times right now, and to take this on is just another thing that we're very grateful that you'd be considering. Thank you.
Thanks.
We are indeed. And there's a lot more history at the Williston Historical Society, and part of the library. The old front part is the Vermont room that holds all of the things for the Historical Society. You may want to check in there at some point in time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been up there, and I just kind of sit and enjoy the old things that are the books and the history. And just the only mistake I've made is going with a child and saying, don't touch, and realizing that was a mistake.
Yes. Any other questions? If not, then a motion has been prepared.
I would move to appoint Chelsea Levis to the Historical and Architectural Advisory Committee for an unexpired 3-year term through June 30, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. We're set. Thank you very much, Chelsea. We appreciate your having the interview and taking on this job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And next, the other part of this is that we have an alternate that we would have looking at appointing an alternate from the DRB, and a person who served in that capacity for Jill Kwong. And if there's no objections to this, if nobody wishes to interview her, then a motion would be in order to appoint the alternate.
Given this is Jill, has it already been on the board at one point?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I'd move to appoint Jill Kwong as the Development Review Board alternate for an unexpired 3-year term through June 30, 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, then all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Good, we've done the appointments then. Joy has just joined us, so we now have as full a board as we're going to have tonight. We have one absent tonight, and we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. I wonder if we can do something with Shirley on the waiting room.
Yep, Shirley's available.
Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes, so perhaps we can move on to item number 9 to select the auditor for the next 3 fiscal years.
Yep, you should be there just about now. And Shirley, I'm going to get you connected here in just one moment.
There we go. Good evening.
Good evening. So could you talk a little bit about the selecting the auditor for the next 3 fiscal years?
Sure. So we did send out an RFP, and unfortunately, the response was not very good. To the 5 weeks request, we got 2 back. Our current auditor, Fothergill, Scallion Valley, and Sullivan and Powers, both of Montpelier, both CPAs who specialize in auditing municipalities. Their qualifications were pretty similar. Their timeline, their audit scope, audit approach, very similar, and their fees were exactly the same for the first year. And in the second and third year out, their fees varied by $100 each. So everything was very similar in their approach. So I then, having had 1 year's experience with Fothergill, Scallion Valley, made several calls about Sullivan and Powers, just out of interest of having a new auditor, a new approach. Somebody who's brand new to the town of Williston. I'm looking for feedback, recommendations, process changes. And so that was one of my reasons for really being interested in Sullivan and Powers. But then I spoke with 6 different municipalities. Some of them are neighbors, and just glowing reviews. I'll say the audit process more similar to what I had been used to, a little bit more grilling than I experienced last year. So they just had high regards. The state highly recommends them for municipal audits. I had a great conversation with one of the audit partners prior to even submitting the RFP. So with everything being so equal, I'm really looking for someone who will help me grow and help the town grow, help improve the town. So my recommendation is to appoint Sullivan and Powers for the next 3 years.
Thanks. Questions from members of the board for Shirley?
Shirley, it's not that we're married to the other firm, but we've been using them for a very long time, and I'm wondering why. Is there something wrong with them, or something that why make the change other than the other people have glowing reviews?
Just in my conversations with all the parties, and I just myself personally, after going through the audit, I felt like it wasn't very thorough. I felt like there was a lot of questions. I mean, Rick, did you have any communication with you? I was surprised there was no interaction with the town manager. I mean, I relate the town manager role is to being the CFO for a company. He's ultimately responsible after the select board for the financial statements. I mean, there was no discussion with Rick. There was no, when they were done, sitting down with me and chatting, what did you find? Here's something you could improve on. It was just sort of, they were done and they were done. And the thing that, I don't know if you are aware of this, but we also got a $10,000 bill, 2 bills that equaled $10,000 over the audit engagement fee. Not a word was said to me. I got the bills and I'm like, you need to justify these because there are 2 issues in the audit that you did help me with. But other than that, I prepared probably 80% of the financial statements, which we don't normally do, but I prefer to prepare them. And so I was just taken off guard when I got those 2 invoices. And even when I asked for an explanation, Ted, I didn't really get one. I didn't get any justification for a $10,000 overage that had never been discussed when they were in the field, called me on the phone. And I'll just be really completely honest, even though we are public record, I just didn't quite hit it off with the audit partner. And I'm not a hard person to get along with, but it was just felt like friction during the audit. So the audit partner who will be assigned to us from Sullivan Powers, I know him from Montpelier. We're not good friends or anything. I know of him, but I mean, just the first conversation we called me, we just got off to a great start, had a great conversation, good dialogue back and forth. And I'm looking for someone to be a partner with the town. One of my issues is when there's a accounting question comes up, there's nobody at the town, I can bounce that off. And I do have some other contacts in the field, but when I'm looking for the right answer or help figuring something out, I want that audit partner to be there and be a partner with me. And one of the things I discussed is if I need to call or send you an email and it takes you 5 or 10 minutes, don't send me a bill for that. Just adjust your audit fee appropriately and don't bill me every time I need your advice on something. And so that was one of the things I was chatting with people about as they called, and everyone was like, nope, we contact them all the time. We never see a bill. The only bill we get is an audit bill unless there is a project that they take on and you agree to a fee up front. So those are my reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Rick could chime in because we have changed auditors in the last number of years.
Yeah, actually, we typically change auditors regardless of performance every 3 to 4 years. And we've currently had the auditors that we're changing from for the past 3 years. So it's time. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that it's good to get fresh ideas, a different perspective every so many years. And the only way to really do that is switch audit firms. So aside from all that Shirley said, I think that's reason in and of itself to switch.
Yeah, I seem to recall that we switch. So yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Shirley? If not, there is a suggested motion.
I'd move to contract with Sullivan and Powers for the fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2023 audits and authorize the town manager to sign any required documentation.
Second.
So, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're good. No opposition.
Thank you.
Perhaps we could do something very quick. The dog license late fee waiver, and that's Eric. I think you're doing that.
Sure. The board may recall the late fee for dog registrations was waived in April until July 1st. That's a $4 late fee on dog registrations. I spoke to the town clerk, Sarah Mason, and we discussed this further. And the recommendation is for the board to consider waiving this late fee through the calendar year. When I wrote this report last week, we've registered about 490 dogs. In a typical year, about 600 are registered in town.
Any questions on this particular? A motion is in order.
I'd move to waive late fees for dog registrations through calendar year 2020.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're good. So we're getting closer to 7:30 for the F-35 noise monitoring system discussion. Are participants on the line, Eric?
Yep, Terry, everyone's on the line from the airport and the Vermont Air National Guard.
Good. Okay. So then if we can put those in on the line, we can start off discussions with Gene Richards and Nick Longo, the Director and Deputy Director of Aviation for Burlington International Airport.
Sure. Gene and Nick, I'll be promoting you up to panelists now, and folks from the Air Guard will have you promoted to panelists after the first part of this dialogue. A lot of people listening, so it's going to find you in the list there.
I saw a lot of people were listening. I thought they were all tuned in for the dog license late waiver fee issue.
Remind to register your dogs if you haven't yet.
I see Gene. I see Nick. Okay. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to participate in your meeting. It's been a couple of years since we've spoke with you, and it's always a pleasure. We're going to give you a update tonight on the sound monitoring program that we applied for, and give you an update on its status. It isn't something that we had budgeted for, and certainly with this year, it's been a very challenging thing, and as I'm sure it has been for you as well. But at the last moment, we pulled together a grant request, and we're feeling, I'll let Nick talk a little bit about this, but we're feeling quite confident that we're not going to get the whole thing. Just like anything, we ask for more to get the attention of the FAA of the need, and to start the process of sound monitoring. So I did speak to the director of the FAA in New England today, and we're anticipating on getting 3 monitors. One on the north end of the airport, one on the south, and one on our property near the Chamberlain School, but not more than that. Again, and I'm still in the belief, and we've been having collaboration with the Guard, and I'm hoping that they, since mostly the noise that we're monitoring is the F-35. I'm hoping that the Department of Defense at some point is able to understand the need, for the community, and is able to participate, in this action. And it may be something that they're able to do both here and other places. But it puts a lot of burden on the airport for something that we don't control. But we understand the need, and we certainly have worked really hard, and especially Nick Longo has worked really hard putting together this grant. And today, talking to the director, it sounds like we have been successful at some level at starting to monitor sound. I'm hesitant to get into that because it's not what we're good at, and so we would be hiring a outside consultant that does this to monitor the noise. And I'll let Nick confirm that to make sure that what I'm saying is correct, but I believe that's how the program would work. Anyhow, that's a quick update on where we're at right now with sound monitoring. I believe it's just around the corner. And I'm hoping, that again, the Department of Defense at some point in the near future will also start a program and also monitor that program and give those results to the community as requested. Nick, do you have other information or update?
Yes, I hope everybody can hear me. I had a little technical difficulty there. I heard the conversation, but I hope you can hear me as well.
We can.
Okay. So my updates pertain, it's very similar to what Jean spoke to, the overall noise program. We spoke with your board some time ago, and the noise compatibility program, or NCP for short, is what this entire process is all about. A noise exposure map, which we completed last year, identifies on a map format contour areas, all specified and regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration, on where those potentially eligible properties are. What they would be eligible for is defined in that NCP, or noise compatibility program. This year, we refined and were able to define a few more mitigation efforts than we ever have been in the past. That process is still under review by the Federal Aviation Administration, and those definitions of new noise mitigation, potential mitigation efforts, are sales assistance, which we can help sell a property on the open market. We would never buy that property, but help sell a property if that property was eligible. Purchase assurance, where the airport would actually buy that property using federal funds. We would then insulate the property and then resell it on the open market for fair market value. And sound mitigation, or sound insulation, where exactly that, the homeowner would continue to occupy the property, and the airport would hire contractors to help reduce the interior noise levels of that sound. Again, all of this is regulated by the FAA, and very little that the airport can do except for define and write those programs into that compatibility program. On the other half of that's the mitigation half. There also is a data review and monitoring portion of our noise compatibility program. Monitoring, of course, is monitoring all air traffic at the airport, making sure not only airlines, general aviation or small aircraft, corporate aircraft, and military, both local and transient military aircraft, are regularly monitored so that we can put those numbers into a modeling system. And yes, I know board member Jeff spoke about this at the last meeting, that this is a a modeling system, and that is the only way the FAA allows for mitigation efforts. The monitoring also consists of, which is more of the topic that we're talking about today, the noise monitoring system, the actual physical assets of monitoring noise adjacent an airport. I do just want to be clear that the monitoring, the numbers, the data, the raw information that we're going to be collecting from these noise monitors, like Jean mentioned, that will be stationed around the airport. Right now, we're looking at 3 monitors supported by the Federal Aviation Administration. We would collect the data. We would publish that data almost live, so people can identify not only the aircraft type, but also the day-night level averages of those aircraft as they fly over any particular monitor. But the information in very little formats will be used to change or prioritize the mitigation efforts. Those are those few programs that I mentioned in the very beginning. So even though that data is being collected, many of this information still has to be modeled, still has to be confirmed with the FAA, and that's what our routine efforts are. But the monitoring is very important, and will continue to do so with the support of the Vermont Air National Guard. And I did listen to the conversation at your July meeting, and there were some questions in there. And again, I'd be happy to go through or answer any questions that the board might have.
Nick,
But thanks. Question comes to mind from the folks that we've been hearing from on email who live quite a distance away from the airport. And the monitoring really wouldn't go out as far as where they live, unless there's something that I haven't heard yet.
That you're speaking about the actual physical monitors themselves?
Yeah.
Correct. So right now, as Gene described it, the FAA has asked us to place them on airport-owned property. And there are properties outside of the airfield fence, or what folks would traditionally outline as airport property. Some as far north as the Winooski River, and some far south is right adjacent to the Williston border on our south border, adjacent Muddy Brook. And then the third one would be most likely on the west side of the airport, or the side that's closest to the Chamberlain School or the entrance to the airport. We have not defined that yet. We still have to study it, design it, engineer it. Once this Federal Aviation grant comes through, that's when we're going to be able to move forward with a much more detailed and formal process of designing, bidding this out, and everything like that. There were some questions about bidding this out too, and this was a great opportunity that Gene and the airport team had a chance to move forward with right away this particular year. A benefit, a very little benefit of COVID-19 is the Federal Aviation Administration actually opened up additional funding for airports to help fund 100% of grants. So this was a great opportunity for the airport to move forward. I know that's a long answer to your question, but those are the three locations, and you're correct. None would be in the border of Williston.
Thank you. Are there members of the board questions?
I don't know who to direct this to, Nick. I guess I'll start with you, but Gene, jump in. Do we know from the research that you've done or people you've talked to, are those three monitoring locations sufficient to get an accurate data as to what the decibel level is going to be around in the region, and of course, obviously, in particular, Williston?
we do have a computer model that Nick can talk a little bit about. So we do have indicators that has been computer formulated, but actual sound monitoring, I don't think. No, the answer is if you actually want to do actual monitor in each community, no, that's not accurate. That's not enough. And I think we will have to continue to expand the program, or like I said earlier, hopefully the Department of Defense will incorporate that into their F-35 program and add it to what they're doing. I mean, that would be the best possible case for the airport, is for them to have their own and to monitor their own, since that's really what people are mostly talking about. Does that sound right, Nick?
Yeah, that's correct. And like Gene said, that noise map, the noise exposure map, which is on our website at btvsound.com. All of this information is on our website there. That noise exposure map does take real data. So while it is modeled, and the way I explain it is the individual aircraft types that are put into this model are studied in a controlled environment and then put into this map. I think very similar to what the Vermont Air National Guard may talk about with other F-35 studies throughout the country. So that controlled modeling put into the map, real radar data over a 1-year period of time is collected and also put into that noise exposure map, and then confirmed with users, airlines, military, and general aviation pilots, and the Federal Aviation Administration Air Traffic Division, making sure everything's consistent. So going back to your question, the noise monitors within their placement, wherever that might be physically on the airport property, will be able to confirm what that noise exposure map has to offer. And that confirmation is anywhere within those contour lines, meaning if we place it on the south end of the airport adjacent to the Williston border, we can still confirm the contour lines on that south end of the airport. Will it identify and monitor noise in Williston and confirm the contour lines in Williston? Not yet. That's not part of this particular grant that's being moved forward today.
Okay. But is that something that can be extrapolated out? If we know that a jet makes a certain decibel level noise at the monitor, we know because there's math and physics, and we've invented a whole bunch of stuff that requires formula at this point. We will know where it is on Oak Hill Road in Williston near the Heinsberg border, that kind of thing. Is that something that is in the realm of possibility of what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's extremely intuitive, because that's exactly what the noise exposure map is. It identifies based on those calculations that you mentioned, albeit extremely complicated in some aspects. It identifies the average noise levels all the way out, hence the actual contour lines on the map in the model. Same thing with the noise monitors. Now we can extrapolate that information and identify and or confirm through modeling again what those distant noise levels might be as well, using the actual noise that's being collected at those stations themselves. So yeah, in a way we can extrapolate that and not only confirm the actual site, but identify it further away from that site as well.
And one thing that we would need down the road is if there are places in Williston or Winooski that we could put these monitors, we would just need what is it, Nick? A right of way,
typically an easement would be needed. But there's different ways we can do it, including that right of way. Yeah.
So as we build the program, we're going to need to find places that we can get easements and maybe even move these devices, from the airport to other desirable places. And again, Nick, I'm sorry if I'm talking out of hat, but we need to talk with our sound monitoring folks. But those are the questions I would want to ask, is if we were to get an easement in your community at a certain place that you're concerned about, maybe there's a place that we could move one of these monitors and with an easement. So I think those are the discussions I would like once we get the program, to see if there's a possibility.
And then my last question for right now is, Gene, what are the probabilities that we will get? I know you said it's a very good chance that we're going to get some form of grant. What are the chances that it's going to be sufficient for what we need?
What I'd want to ask you is what are you going to, and Nick can talk to you a little bit about this, and I had hoped he'd get into it a little bit, is what are we going to use with the information? Like, you have the sound maps already. So did you want to use it to verify the information that we already have with the sound maps we have? How did you want to use the information that, they were for? Because if the case is that you want to verify it, I think if we were able to move these around, then I would say, yes, they would probably work quite nicely. But if we're not able to do that, I think we'd have to expand the program. And I wouldn't say that its current status would, personally, I already know it's loud at the airport. So what I would prefer to do is move them into the communities, because that's where I'm getting calls, is in Williston and in Winooski. So I'm hoping at some point, we're able to have a program that has monitors in the community. So when the people have concerns, there can be verification in their communities. Our current program is the one that I believe the FAA is going to approve, is the minimum program that they can allow us to do right now. But I would try to work off from that program to get what I think the community is really asking for.
I think, just to add on to that, Gene, I think a very important point to your comment there is that the data is going to be collected, the data is going to be shared, the data is going to be almost live to anybody to view on the website. However, the data will not be used to create a new noise exposure map. It's not allowed to be used by the Federal Aviation Administration, meaning we can't use that data to program the noise compatibility program or offer any of those noise mitigation to a resident, nor can we change the maps based on just that data. So it's very particular. Even though we can confirm it and look at confirm the dynamics behind a contour line, the next time we redo a map, it's still going to be noise modeled and not with this information collected.
So Nick, what's the real purpose for these noise monitors, would you say? How are they used in the industry? Like what do people use them for?
So a couple of great examples, two really big examples actually are Seattle, Washington Airport, or Seattle Tacoma, and Boston, just down the road. They have a significant amount of noise monitors. Boston has a few dozen, and so does Seattle. You can literally go on their website. You can, just like a flight tracking app on your phone, you can actually see aircraft, and you can see them go over the locations that are identified on the map that have noise monitors and see what the decibel level is, and of course associate it with that departing or arriving aircraft. So it's a feature that the airport can use to confirm not only noise complaints and identify ways to mitigate noise in a different way, with noise departure procedures, or identify within the communities that maybe a straight departure is not appropriate because there might be a school there. Winooski is a good example of that. The Air National Guard was able to alter their flight path slightly so that it diverts outside of that school district or whatever sensitive noise receptor is in that particular area. So the airport can use that information for that all day. The other information is used directly from a homeowner, a property owner, or a resident in that particular area, not only to identify it, but to really help identify the data for the airport to continue those noise mitigation efforts on those departure procedures. Many of the airports that I've been informed from our consultant are actually downgrading many of their noise monitoring systems because they are used less frequently, albeit a lot of them, like Tacoma and Boston, do not have a joint use airfield. So it is very unique at each individual airport how the information is used.
Hey, Nick, can you also talk a little bit about our conversations with the Guard and some of the things that they've talked about that maybe will allude into the conversations that follow us? So some of the things that Caesar has said that they're going to try to do down the road or work into.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to step on Caesar or Colonel Shevchuk's toes, but with communication, it looks like or appears that the Air National Guard, and they can define this better because I certainly am not the expert on their programs, but it sounds like there are some identified areas that they are going to be studying the F-35 noise in particular over in the West Coast. And there may be some other granting opportunities or funding opportunities for them to participate a little bit more on noise monitoring as well. And I don't know the particulars, but it does sound like they are working towards that goal. And I know they're on the line, so that they can define that much better than I can, I think.
Thanks, Nick.
Gordon, you had some questions?
Yeah, I actually have two. Hi, Nick. Gordon here. One of my first ones is I maybe I misunderstood or I'm not understanding. So there's a current noise mapping already done, and you've said or stated tonight that even though we get existing or new information, that's not going to significantly change what we have. What if the information is significantly different? I mean, I've read a lot of emails from not only our town but other towns that are concerned about the decibel levels and have some of their.
We lost you.
Lost you, Gordon.
Gordon, we lost you.
Sorry, Gordon. I didn't quite hear the last part of that. I think I lost you there.
I think we lost them totally.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try to sum that up quicker. You already have, sorry about that. You already have existing noise information or mapping. If we get significant change of data, how is that going to be interpreted, and will that affect any changes down the road due to not only Williston but other towns surrounding the airport?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. And so the data that's collected with the actual noise monitors could be that step to identify a revision, an update to the noise exposure map, but not necessarily the revision. So if something is significantly different, then we can redo that modeling and redo the noise exposure map. Now, on a schedule basis, we typically redo and revise a noise exposure map every 5 years. That's typically the time frame the FAA likes to see, or when a significant aircraft based at that airport is changed. We just did this noise map last year, 2019. That was because of the F-35A operation and the new operation coming forward. Again, not all F-35As are operating at the airport right now, or have been slowly coming online over the course of the last year. Hence where that modeling system comes into play. 1 year after full operation, we've also been working with the Vermont Air National Guard to update the noise exposure map again. And the FAA, or Federal Aviation Administration, has confirmed that's a good plan. So again, 2019, and again, 1 year after full operation, which will be about a year from today, or a year from this time frame, 2021. So that'll be only 2 years since we'll be revising a noise exposure map.
And Nick?
Yep.
Can you go why we're using those dates? Those are not arbitrary. They're not airport dates. What are they? And what is the program, and what do we get from the program? Just so that people know that we didn't make up the date, and why and how they come about, and how the program, and if there are changes, what controls and what we can do with the results.
So the dates are again every 5 years we typically update a noise exposure map. The last one we did was in 2015. That is on the website as well. We're scheduled, and of course it's not a quick action, although there are sometimes opportunities to quickly ask for federal funding. Typically, that's not how the FAA works. It's a highly coordinated programmed capital program that we ask for federal funding every year, and typically we have a 5-year plan with them. So again, 2015 was our last map. 2019 last year was our latest edition of that map. Again, we'll redo the map in 2021 because of not only confirming the flight patterns, because now we have real radar data to use that actually does incorporate the F-35A aircraft. Now we can use that in the 2021 map. And then moving forward, it's always going to be the same, whether it's a commercial aircraft that changes operations or brings, let's say, a larger aircraft online more frequently, then we'll also consider changing that noise exposure map. The airport sponsor, or the airport, always has to confirm when they're applying for a sound insulation project or a noise monitoring or noise monitoring device. They have to confirm that the noise map that is currently in place is the most up to date and all information is correct in there. So no matter what, we have to identify those changes. Yeah, I think I got all the questions in there. I'm not sure. I might have missed one in there though.
Nick, I have one more on the specific locations that you mentioned where the placement of the monitorings are around the airport. If that's deemed that they can be moved to other locations down the road due to flight path and noise concerns by our residents, how quickly can they be moved to be set up? Are they mobile? Can you talk about that a little bit on the setup process and how long it would take to move them if they can be?
Sure, yeah. So the FAA typically wants and requests mobile units to be moved, wherever is needed. I think you might be able to see the benefit to that from a federal perspective. They're funding this program. So if things do move or the airport does, sell or relocate property lines, it's easy to relocate those programs. In our noise grant, we did specify a permanent station. However, there's much work to be done. There's design work, there's analysis of where exactly we want to put those noise monitors. There's online software and database compilations that we have to put together to make it available to the public. So we really haven't discussed yet whether it's going to be that mobile unit or a permanent station. And that's where the FAA is going to come into play very significantly on what they are going to.
And so the answer to the question is we haven't received the grant yet. We haven't talked to the consultants yet. It's everything we're working off a bit of hearsay until we've hired the consultants. And what we would offer to do is once we've hired the consultants, if we do get the grant, which we've been told we should, I would say bringing them on this conversation would be really helpful. And but I think a lot of it will have to do with getting these easements. That was part of the restrictions of us not getting them, is that we had no easements outside the airport, and that's why we're putting out on airport land. So I would say we're working together and finding the right place and getting the easements. That's going to help power this ahead, I think, in a very good way. But I do think before we get ahead of ourselves and talking more than what we actually know, because we're not experts on noise. We've not done this before. We run airports, and we are learning currently on the program, and we will take back the information that we get tonight, and we will certainly implement that and pass that on to the noise consultants that we have, and or open the door to have you have discussions with them as well. But we're open, whatever flexibility the program has, I am very committed to implementing it if I'm able.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can transition now to the National Guard spokespeople and then come back for questions and also ask the people on the line for their questions.
Sure. Gene and Nick, I'm going to mute each of you. I'll leave you on a panelist. Feel free to disable your camera if you like for a bit here. We'll have you on the line if there's more questions. Oh, I see you both did. Thank you. And next, I'm going to connect. We have joining us Fighter Wing Commander Colonel David Shevchik and Brigadier General Hank Harder. I'll get them connected right now.
I see General Harger, and I see Dave Shevchik. So welcome to the Select Board meeting of Williston, and please share with us your comments.
Yes, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Once again, my name is Brigadier General Hank Harder. I'm here with Colonel Dave Shevchik, the Fighter Wing Commander. I'm the Assistant Adjutant General for Air, so I work at Camp Johnson, and Colonel Shevchik runs the Fighter Wing out of South Burlington. On behalf of General Knight, it's an honor for us to be with you here tonight and try to help answer some questions. It's also nice to see our airport partners, Gene Richards and Nick Longo, also on the call. As we go forward, I really view that first of all, that we're honored to be the first Air National Guard unit that's selected to fly this aircraft, and we take our responsibility both for our mission, but as proud partners in the community very seriously. The men and women of the Air Guard come from all the communities, including Williston, and we're really proud to do our jobs during the week and drill weekends, both here at home and then when called upon for federal service. With that, we'll go ahead and open up to your questions that you may have for Colonel Shevchik or myself. And thank you for the opportunity to be here.
So the first question I would have, I saw a number of emails back in June from both Gene Richards and the colonel regarding the possibilities of getting funding. So is there possibilities of other funding from the federal government, particularly the National Guard or Defense Department?
Yeah, I'll begin to answer that, and then I'll kick it over to Colonel Shevchik. What we have now and what's already programmed and funded for 2021, and it's all part of the EIS, the Environmental Impact Study, and what's called the Management and Mitigation Plan under that study for the F-35 coming to Burlington. So already planned for and funded from the National Guard Bureau is a 2021 noise study that will happen in the calendar year of 2021. And the purpose of that is to validate, once we have all 20 aircraft here and we know the operations that we're going to be conducting on a weekly basis, that data will be taken in by a contractor that's retained by the National Guard Bureau, and then it will be fed into the DoD-approved noise modeling software to come up with the purpose of really validating what the projections were in the environmental impact statement. So that's what we know is going to happen, and that's already funded. I'm not aware of any additional funding right now that's available for some of the things we're discussing tonight. And I'll kick it over to Colonel Shevchik.
Thanks, sir. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. Happy to be here. Definitely want to thank. I'm glad it's good to see Nick and Gene there. We've had a great collaboration and partnership with them, and we share the same commitment and passion for being good stewards of the community, just like they do, like we all do, because we have a lot of our members are from Williston and work and live in Williston. So we definitely take the noise concerns as seriously as you do. And that's something that I think is important to emphasize. And we've been working through that with Gene and Nick and their team. And as General Harder said, there's already a couple of things on the table, and I'll just kind of outline those real quick. And then I definitely want to leave time for questions. But we've already confirmed, I personally called down to the National Guard Bureau and already confirmed that the funding has been allocated for 2021. So the MMP, the mitigation and monitoring plan that General Hart already mentioned, that commitment from the EIS, that's already funded for 2021. That's going to happen. What's also happening is, from follow-ups with them, is that there is a noise study, and Nick mentioned this already, out west that we've shared at a couple of Navy bases. So from the most recent National Defense Authorization Act, Congress mandated this noise study that the Navy conduct in 2 locations out west, one of which is an F-35 base. And that's at Naval Air Station Lemoore in California. And I think why this is important and significant in conjunction with the other study here is that it's going to do what we all want to do, which is to compare modeling data with real world acoustic data. And I think that's what we all seek and want to know and understand is the models that were used, are they accurate? And so that's one of those things where that's going to be done through all 4 seasons. And we should have that data by the end of next year as well. And that's going to be significant because between that and then in conjunction with the 2021 already funded one from the National Guard Bureau, we'll have our full complement of aircraft. We will have had them for about a year, and then now be able to take that data and then make the assessment of, hey, where do we need to make any changes or updates, as Nick and Gene mentioned as well. In the meantime, while we're waiting for this, because I understand that timeline, we're talking 2021 timeframe and beyond, is because we do take the noise mitigation seriously, we're already taking measures to continue to mitigate the noise just in general right now. And I can go through and outline some of those, and if you don't mind, I'll just kind of take you through some of those, if that's okay, time permitting. Just in general, I think everyone's pretty aware, even though we can't publicly say the flying window. I think everyone kind of knows we take off in the morning, and in the afternoon, it's pretty consistent. So we try to not take off too early or too late. If there is going to be night, we try to do a press release on that. So we try to be considerate of the community and say, hey, kind of here's the time that we're flying, and try to do that where it doesn't have a huge impact super early in the morning, super late at night. The other thing we're doing is we're consistently following noise abatement procedures. And what I mean by that is we're meeting a certain climb gradient, a reduced power setting as much as possible to go ahead and minimize and mitigate that any noise impact to either really Winooski to the north or Williston to the south, depending on which direction we're taking off. We also don't use afterburner. We've had one afterburner takeoff in our hundreds of takeoffs already so far. So we are well below the 5%. We're somewhere in the well under 1%, and we're committed to continuing that. We raised our pattern altitude by 500 feet. So we've raised the altitude of the local pattern. And that when the planes do recover to the local area, we recover to the highest altitude possible that the weather allows. And what I mean by that is on a very clear day, we'll basically descend from 8,000 to 10,000 feet in idle power to kind of fly directly over the airport in idle, and then kind of power as required to spiral back down and land. So whatever the weather allows and safety allows, that's what we do when we start high and work our way down. And then the final thing is we do a 1 to a full stop. And what I mean by that is we have a 1 to a full stop policy. And that's, we don't do local training. We don't use pattern operations unless it's absolutely a necessity. We do those all off station. So again, when people are coming back to land, our pilots are basically just landing and that's it. They don't continue to do patterns to try to be considerate of the community, again, kind of mitigate the noise as much as possible. So those are just a few of the things right now. So between what's going on now and what's projected for the future, I think we all share the same thing, and that's, hey, let's compare the noise monitoring, what's the actual data with what was modeled or projected, and validate or verify it or dispute it.
Thanks. So members of the board, do you have any questions before we go to the public for their questions?
I just had a few.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Colonel, why is it important to get data in all seasons?
So all seasons, I think it's because there's so many variables, right? Noise is very, as you mentioned, I think you were the one who mentioned, we were on earlier, mentioning about, physics and the algorithms and the calculations. And there's so many variables at play that I think it's important to assess all the different seasons based upon all the different atmospherics to be able to get the data so it's, as accurate as possible. And that's why I think validating and verifying the models that we've used, I think that's why that's important to see, hey, are we in the ballpark? Because I think that's what we all want to know is this modeling that was used, it was a model. Now we have jets here, we're flying them, we've been flying them for a year. Is it correct? Is it accurate? Okay. So hopefully that makes sense.
I'm assuming then that the data that you're talking about is going to be Vermont data. The funding that you've said the National Guard Bureau has said has come into play and does now already exist. Is that going to be for monitoring the noise here in Vermont, or is that going to be for monitoring the noise at the Naval Air Station out west?
So two different things. The monitoring of the actual base during the seasons is the out west. So that is the Naval Air Station Lemoore. The study that's happening.
Do they have the same seasons out there that we do here?
Do they have the same seasons?
Yeah, you just indicated that taking the data for each of the seasons is important because of all these different atmospherics and different variables. Do they have those same variables? Do they have those same seasons out west?
I would say they have different variables. I would say pretty much every base has a little bit different environment. And so they're not exactly the same. So that's why I think when we see what their data provides, it's already been funded and mandated by Congress, and we can actually take that and see the model that they used, hey, was it accurate, should provide insight into and apply our modeling that we used in Vermont to see if it's accurate.
Okay, but it won't be exactly accurate because we don't have the same seasons, right?
It'll let us know if the modeling that was used was accurate.
All right, thank you.
Anything else from the board members before we move to questions from the audience? If not, I would ask the people on the line then to keep your comments brief. If I was a betting man, I would say that the board will approve the installation of a noise monitoring system and a letter to that effect. So the questions, I would hope that you would ask your questions of both the airport folks and the National Guard.
And hi, everyone listening on the line. I know we do have what, if anyone's listening on the phone, you would need to hit *9 and it would indicate to me you'd like to make a comment. For folks listening in the chat or using the online component, if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, please type in the chat, and what I'll do is go in the order I see them. I received some emails earlier, and those have all been shared with the board before the meeting. And I spoke with Terry Marin earlier through email, and she'd like to make a comment. So I have her first on my list. Terry, I'll meet you in a moment here.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Terry Marin, and I'm a resident of Williston. And I'm speaking tonight in favor of the monitoring and tracking system at the airport. I think this system in the airport at Burlington is going to provide valuable information about our airport here in Burlington as opposed to out west. And I just live less than 9 miles away from the airport over near Lake Iroquois. And I routinely get readings of 100 to 108 decibels at the house. And that's on my monitor, which, on my phone, it's in the dangerous range. And this is happening Tuesday through Friday, several times a day, multiple planes going over. I'm distressed over the noise. My animals, my cats and dog are distressed and run for cover when these planes come over. And the wildlife, I'm sure, is just terrified, and it leaves you with kind of a jolted feeling in your body. And I just can't imagine if I'm getting 108 decibels here in Williston, this far away from the airport, what folks in Burlington, South Burlington, Winooski are having to deal with on a daily basis, whether they're at work or at school or any other business. It's pretty disruptive. And we were told back when these years ago, when they were first slated to come here, that they were going to be just about the same as the F-16s and that it shouldn't be any worse than the F-16s. Well, I, for 10 years, worked on a small farm here on my land, and the F-16s would go over, and yes, I would have to stop conversation on a telephone if I was talking outside. It wasn't too bad, but now there's just no way you can have a conversation. And now we're all into the Zoom mode and trying to do meetings and things, and it's difficult. And there are people that are having problems for work and school. And, this Chittenden County is the largest, most populated county in the whole state of Vermont. And I just feel that it never should have been put here. It should have been placed in a place that was not so densely populated. And I think that we need to have this monitor here to get a precise, knowing what the precise readings really are and how this is affecting the community and the businesses and things here. And I just want to say, surprisingly today, the decibel reading barely got over 90 when they flew back in. But, I know they can do it. It didn't have to be 108. It was about 90 at the tops. So I would really urge the select board to consider this, supporting this effort to put a monitoring system at the airport.
Thank you.
Let's see. Next, Patrick, I'll have you connected here in just a moment.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Ken.
Hi, yes, this is Patrick Kelly. Like the previous caller, I too live near Lake Iroquois, about 5 minutes to be exact, and I've worked from home for the past 4 months and I've had the benefit of being able to monitor noise as well. And the peak that I've registered, I also have a noise monitoring app on my phone. The peak I've registered is about 90 decibels, but it's been more along the average of about 75 decibels. So I think there will be disparities from place to place, but I've had a pretty good amount of data collected over the last 4 months. And it's hard to believe that, the decibel level would be peaking at around 108 decibels. So just wanted to throw that out there, that I think different people may be experiencing different noise levels, but it's been a pretty solid, decent decibel level in terms of tolerability. Again, the decibels are, ranging right around or averaging right around 75 decibels. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment at this time? Please let me know using the chat. I have one person, a hand raised. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I think it's Candy. I'm going to connect you.
I'm wondering, it's not Candy, it's Candell.
Oh,
and
my apologies.
That's all right. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all the information about noise mitigating windows and readings on noise. And what I'm wondering is, why aren't we going more towards a movement of removing the Air National Guard F-35s from this populated area and putting it in some place that's a bit more remote? Noise mitigating windows are not going to get rid of the sound. The whole population is feeling about Vermont is the green outdoors. And what noise mitigating windows do is make it tolerable, if possible, to squirrel away into our homes and try and live with the noise that's being promoted, that's being made by these fighter jets, potentially nuclear fighter jets. I don't know why they're here. It's my understanding through past information is that Senator Leahy used his influence to take the third on the list, which was Vermont, and promote it and push it until it became number one. So my hope would be to eliminate the F-35s in this area and let us live normal lives, as opposed to hiding in our houses to try and avoid the horrendous noise that these planes put out. That's my comment.
Thank you.
It looks like next James is up. I'll get you connected here momentarily.
Hello, my name is James Lees. I prepared a form. It's a 13-page noise and complaint form that's online that anybody can use to fill out the details about their exposure to the F-35 noise. That form was put out a few weeks ago, and there's already 268 people or 268 responses to the form. I counted 58 of them from Williston, 58 people. So some people have been filling it out several times. So the number of people and the number of responses is not the same. But almost all of them show distress. They say the noise is deafening. They say it's really hurting them. There's pain. There's many people are saying there's injury, there is damage to their hearing. And many people with children are concerned about learning impairment. Now, I mention hearing and learning in particular because it was the United States Air Force that identified those as things that happen when you're exposed to very high aircraft noise levels. So my question for the officers is, can you legitimately, as military officers, authorize these planes to take off? I'm not talking about take them away from the airport. They can stay there, but are you legitimately authorized to have them take off if you know, and as this report of people's experience shows, and as we've heard from people on this call, if you know that it's hurting people? Because doesn't military law, it's very, very, very clear as when I read it, but that it requires that you do your best to avoid hurting civilians, and that as Mr. Kandel pointed out, a simple solution is to locate the F-35 jets in a place where you're not in a densely populated area. So you have an alternative, and why not exercise that alternative of positioning them somewhere else, or at least not using them in a densely populated area where they're harming people? And I would also like to just say, with regard to the resolution that's on the floor, that noise monitoring, so what we've got is the impression or the sensation of people and the expression of people with their distress and their experience of hearing damage. But actually monitoring the noise is very important, because then we have an objective reading of the facts. We have the data. And that, I think, is crucial to decision making. Thank you very much.
There seems to be somebody else on the line that hasn't muted.
I think it may just be some background noise. James is me. I think it was background noise.
Okay. Any further questions from people in the audience?
Looks like Art Sonosia. Art, you'll be next up here.
Welcome, Art. You need to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I live on East Hill Road, which is kind of a hill toward the airport. And since the pandemic, been working at home, and I cannot carry on conversations inside my house when the planes go over. So I did download an app. And I want to acknowledge that I cannot vouch for the accuracy of this decibel app. But I've gotten readings of 108 decibels. This morning before 11 o'clock, 101 decibels. And again, I am asking the select board, it doesn't sound like the grant that the airport is seeking is going to address Williston's needs. Is there a possibility of getting a more sophisticated sound monitoring system for Williston, and maybe even putting it by the Williston Town Hall? So in terms of an easement or right of way, so that the residents of Williston could get an accurate reading of the noise level that we are dealing with. Again, I want to acknowledge that an iPhone app is not terribly accurate, possibly. We need accurate information. This is I am not against the F-35s at this point. What I am for is getting accurate information so we could make an informed decision. So I'm asking the select board whether or not it is possible to get a more sophisticated than a iPhone app monitoring system to be located near the town hall so we could monitor the accurate noise that the F-35s are causing in the town of Williston. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Nick and Jean answered that earlier with mobile units that we might be able to put in place. So it's a great question. And once we make a decision to go ahead and pursue the system, perhaps we can discuss that. Anyone else?
Yeah, we had someone write in for folks joining from the Air Guard. Marcia is curious how many pilots are being trained and who fly out of the base. If there's a flight simulator and if there's a requirement per pilot for flights per year, hours per year. If folks from the Air Guard wouldn't mind answering that.
Please.
Colonel Shevchik, as the current wing commander, would probably be the best position to answer that question. So over to you, Colonel Shevchik.
Great, thanks, sir. Yes, absolutely. So we do have, there are requirements. So both for operators, both for pilots, and then for maintainers, for anyone who's basically around the jet to go ahead and, fulfill and execute their skill requirements. So in terms of simulator requirements, we have simulator requirements, we have flight requirements, and we try to execute those. And that's basically what our flying schedule is built around is however many pilots we have to execute the appropriate number of sorties to stay current and be ready to execute our federal mission, just like we have to be ready to continue to execute our state mission like we've been doing as well. So yes, we do have those requirements. And right now we've been building up. We have about 20 or so pilots that are current and qualified right now. And then we're going to work our way up to where we're upwards of 30 plus once we have a full complement of jets. But as the jets have trickled in, we've tried to waterfall appropriately our pilots and our maintainers so our skilled professionals have adequate access to the aircraft, both in the air and on the ground, to go ahead and learn their skills and their tradecraft. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks.
Looks like I have one more person, Christina, on the line. Christina, I'm going to unmute you just a moment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. I have a question also for the Air Guard. I know that Colonel Shevchik spoke about some of the mitigation that are.
Sorry, Christina, we can't hear you as clearly now. Are you able to hold the phone a little bit closer?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Colonel Shevchik spoke about some of the mitigation measures, which I appreciate. My question was just around the timing of the noise monitoring here in Vermont. What is the timing from the airport on those mobile units, when they would get them? And then my comment is just, why would we want to wait for data through the end of 2020, a year and a half away, when we could be starting to, get data and then implement some additional mitigation measures sooner rather than later?
Nick, is that you or?
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in on that one if that's all right. So the first question is the implementation of the noise monitors themselves. That's going to be dependent on the federal funding that comes through the Federal Aviation Administration. So that grant application is currently being processed by the FAA. We're expecting that grant to come anytime between now and the end of the federal fiscal year, although we believe it's coming soon to us. There's some design work that needs to occur, and some procurement that also needs to occur to actually purchase these noise monitors. So we're hoping by the end of this year, contingent on that federal funding, we would have these in place and operating. The second question there with why wait to start the implementation process and all of those other various mitigation efforts. The noise compatibility program, which is what defines every single piece of this, from the actual noise monitors to the sound insulation program to the sales assistance program. Those are in this document that is also under review by the FAA. That document has been produced and publicly commented on over the last year. All of that information is on our website at btvsound.com. There's also a 180-day federal review process. That document was submitted to the FAA earlier this year, and we await their final approval. We cannot move forward, whether through federal grants or through those federal grants, we cannot move forward on those mitigation efforts until that noise compatibility program is officially approved by the FAA. So each one of those pieces of the puzzle have to be in place prior to not only funding, but also the implementation of each one of these processes. And that's a very normal process for airports to not only update and to revise a noise compatibility program as events or aircraft change at that airport, revise the noise exposure map every 5 years or so, as I explained earlier, and then move forward through implementation of those processes. That implementation too is complex in this area, as it has been for the last several decades. And we'll continue to work with each community, South Burlington, Williston, Winooski, a little bit of Colchester, and the city of Burlington, as each one of those communities has dwelling units or residents that are within the eligible areas or the eligible contour areas. So again, each one of those puzzle pieces has to be very carefully put in place, and then federal funding both reviewed, approved, and then eventually received by the airport to implement.
Nick, I just want to say a couple things. I'm the one that makes Nick's job very difficult. So I loved Art's suggestion, and actually it makes a lot of sense. And Nick is probably saying, Jane, don't say it. But if there's a way to move that from the south end of the airport to Williston and the one from the north end to Winooski, I think this has been very fruitful tonight. And if that's something that I can do, I will certainly advocate for it in every way that I can. I think it's a really good idea. And Art, thank you for that. And Nick, I'm sorry that I'm heading off on a tangent on you, but that's what I do. So I will work on that and see if we can head in that direction. And what we would need, as Nick said, is an easement.
Thank you. If there are no more questions from the audience, I'll take this opportunity to thank you very much to our presenters from the airport, from the city of Burlington, and the Air National Guard. We appreciate your being here tonight with the select board and the citizens of Williston and other localities. So thank you very much, and we'll proceed on with discussing the noise monitoring system as a board.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And to the board, Terry, and the rest of the board, Eric, and all of you, thank you for that opportunity. I look forward to a time when we can come to your meetings in person after the nation gets through the current crisis. And please just know, really appreciate the comments from both the board, from the airport personnel, and your citizens, that we are going to try to be the best neighbors we can be. We have an important job to do, as you all do, and we want to be receptive and mindful of the impact that our operations have. So just once again, thank you very much for the ability to come here and be with you tonight. Colonel Shevchik, thanks to you. And anytime you want to hear from us, Eric, you have my information. I know Brigadier General Lambrick, the Chief of Staff, also one-star general, is a Williston resident, and he was actually participating in a Williston town requirement he had. But it's an honor for us to be here, and thank you again. So really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, two members of the board, we do have, we've had an extensive discussion now over 2 different meetings, and if there's no more general discussion, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to support the installation of a noise monitoring system for the F-35 aircraft and authorize the chair to submit a letter relaying this position to the Vermont Air National Guard and the Burlington Airport officials.
Is there a second? And a seconded by Gordon. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're good. Okay. Moving on. Fiscal year budget 2021 budget and the cash flow analysis. And I think Shirley and Eric are handling this.
Yep, Shirley will take the lead on this, and I can certainly jump in as well, but I'm getting Shirley reconnected.
Good.
Hello. So in regards to COVID-19 and its impact on our revenues, we decided to create a 2-step process. First was preparing this cash flow projection in front of you, which, I'll ask you what your questions are next. But and the purpose of that was to ensure that we didn't need to come to the board and request permission to obtain a tax anticipation note if we didn't have the cash flows to carry us through with the change in the timing of the tax payments, which Eric will talk about later. And because of the decreasing revenues that we're going to experience, not so much FY20, but FY21. So the first step was just to say, okay, are we going to have enough cash to get us through the year? So I put this cash flow analysis together. And it does show that we should be fine through the summer. It was done in 15 days, sort of halfway through the month and the next month, because beginning of the month and end of the month isn't necessarily indicate whether in the middle of the month you have a cash flow crisis or not. But this does show that, fingers crossed, it's very conservative, that we should have enough cash, and I'm talking cash, not necessarily revenue, to get us through till tax payments begin to flow in, I'll say at the very end of August, early September. The next step is to do a detailed analysis of the revenues for FY21, to do our best estimates of what we think that's going to be, and then looking at our total expenses, and then working with Eric, rolling out a plan to figure out what cuts we have to make. So this is the first part of a 2-part project. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
So this is really a work in progress. And we'll be working on this for months to come, it sounds like.
Well, and gathering other data for the next part of the step as well. I already started some conversations about maybe some capital projects we can, again, I won't say defer, I'll say cancel, for lack of another word. We just won't fund them. We've already started some operating expenses. So I've talked with a few departments already, and we're starting to gather that information for FY21. So we'll already have, we already have a little bit of funds that we know are there if we need to. Once we, like I said, I think the first step is projecting the revenue and where do we think we're going to be, and then where do our expenses in regards to that, and what cuts need to be made.
Yeah, and I think a key takeaway here is from the cash flow side, we have adequate cash flow for the next couple of months, so that's good. That's good news. You don't need to take out a tax anticipation note. And as Shirley said, we've got to dig into the revenue projection side. I think we'll have a clearer picture in the next couple months. First tax payment, local option tax receipt report for the preceding 3 months will be coming out in September, I believe. And then also looking at our other revenue sources. For example, the clerk's office isn't able to do passport services the last 3 months. We get a lot of revenue from that each year as well. So we're going to take a look at the revenue side, and then I'd like to really be conservative on the expense side, look at the capital project piece, and also look in departments to see where we can make some cutbacks, at least temporarily, and then reassess later in the year. But this is going to be an ongoing effort, and there's a lot of unknowns here, a lot of moving variables, and we'll continue to carry on and update the board as we progress here month by month.
Yeah, I think once we get past the first tax payment, that'll be telling about and comparing that to August 15th last year and previous years. I mean, that will provide some information for us about the state of Williston's residents' finances.
And Shirley, if I can interject for a moment, I know looking for the local options tax side, we're trying to find some matrices that are good to compare. Granted, we haven't had a period like this before, but we look back to 2008. I think the receipt report will be really interesting because, granted, we haven't had as many in-person shopping for a period, but the online sale component as well. So be interesting to see where that lands. We don't get a breakdown for that. We just get one report for the local option tax receipts. But we'll look to that. We'll also talk with other municipalities to see what benchmarks they've targeted to use for any revenue reduction in that regard.
Yep. So I didn't have anything to add to this report unless folks have questions.
Questions from the board? Guess not. Okay, we can move on to the next one, which is the municipal tax rate. And I think that's you again, Shirley.
I think, Eric, are you going to start us?
No, Shirley, you can take it away if you like.
Okay.
All right.
So Eric and I kind of tag team this one Friday afternoon. The voters approved the $11,671,000 budget, of which I'll just round it off. $5,700,000 is to be raised by property taxes. The current grand list as of July 6th has us about 40 million greater than the prior year. When we put the FY21 budget together, the estimated tax rate at that time was 0.2695. And at the current time, we are projecting 0.2725. So an additional, well, I should go back for a minute. 2695 was last year. The FY21 budget had 0.2743. So that was an increase of not even half a cent. And at the current time, with the information we now have, the tax rate at 0.275 is our recommendation. Again, we're seeing an increase in the tax rate of about half a cent, or $4.80 on 100,000 of assessed value. The calculation itself is just showing the budget and what the grand list is based on the 100,000 of assessment, using the 100,000 assessment. The small bit that is the tax stabilization. So that's the contract we have with landowners who have their property in like agriculture, et cetera. So with all that said and done, keeping a total budget based on the tax rate of $5,675,910, we come up with a tax rate of 0.2750.
And we project this during the budget process, and our grand list grew about 2%. The slight variance between between the projection and the recommended tax rate here is the grand list didn't grow quite as much as we anticipated, but our assessor Bill Hinman and his team did a very good job in projecting this. It's good to be really close and not far away, so I give them credit for that.
Yes. Yeah.
Any questions from the board?
I wanted to add one quick thing. One of the reasons why the grant list did not reach projections is because of the impact of the pandemic. It did affect some business valuations, particularly hotel, the new hotel that was being constructed. And that did have an impact on our final grant list.
Any other questions from the board? I'd be looking for a motion.
Move to set the fiscal year 2021 tax rate at $0.275.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. We have passed the tax rate. So next is the tax bill installment amendment for fiscal year 21.
So in a usual year, we would have tax bills going out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think that endeavor's a little much right now. We've just set a tax rate. Taxes are also due tomorrow due to the changes brought on by the pandemic. So what that leads to is the homestead declaration, figuring out the education tax credit amounts is going to flow in a little bit. The assessor's office said as of last week, there's still about 500 to 600 property owners who haven't filed a homestead declaration. Granted, they have till October 1st to do that. We anticipate about half of those will get an adjustment for the education rate. But this also creates mailing out duplicate bills and additional questions from folks. In addition, there's some pragmatic pieces of the clerk's office needs to print these bills now, get them put in envelopes, mailed out. So I spoke with Sarah, and a timeline to have the first tax payment due September 15th is what we're recommending. I believe we can get everything out the door early in August, and granted, we'll start to get payments coming in. The select board has been granted the authority to adjust the tax billing due dates past town meeting by the legislature in Act 102. Staff recommends that the board adjust the first payment from August 15th to September 15th, but maintains the November 15th and February 15th additional due dates. And we're happy to answer questions on this that the board has.
Well, just to give a small update, Eric, I spoke with Dick Ransom, our assistant assessor, yesterday, and the current numbers are we are 372 homeowner rebate returns behind last year at this point. So still quite a few to come in.
And with what Shirley shared earlier with our projected cash flows, there wouldn't be a question of putting the bill out earlier to get cash flow in lieu of a tax anticipation note. So we feel we have the cash to carry us forward to move this deadline ahead. And the 15th is a number of people are also familiar with, is another factor we looked at.
So is the tax anticipation note one that was addressed by the legislature as being interest-free?
It was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, but we're not seeing a need to pursue one of those at this time.
If we needed it, yeah. Okay. Other questions for Eric or Shirley? If not, I'm looking for a motion again. At the bottom of page 2.
I'd move under the authority granted by the Vermont legislature in Act 102 to set the tax payment due dates for fiscal year 2021 as September 15, 2020, November 15, 2020, and February 15, 2021.
Second.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your hands. 1, 2. My screen isn't going well. So 3. I can't see Gordon. My battery is running low, it says here.
Signifying yes, Terry. Yes.
Thank you, Gordon. So hopefully I won't disappear from the screen, but we're moving on then to the manager's report. We have both Rick and Eric on this.
I think the power strip. Yeah, try that. Yeah, switch on the power strip.
I was
Is my
about to
guess.
I was about to jump up to help troubleshoot that, but actually, I don't have anything this evening beyond.
Much better. It worked.
Okay, thank you, Joy.
Mr. Chair, I don't have anything to add to the written report, but I suspect maybe Eric might have a few things, so.
Just a quick update for the board. The fire chief hiring process will be conducting first interviews later this week. And my goal is to identify finalists and look to have a final interview early in August with the hopes of making an offer shortly after and having a new chief on board in a September timeframe if all goes according to plan right now.
How many are you interviewing?
We have 4 applicants for the first round later this week. And one other thing I'd note for the board, we're reviewing the meeting schedule moving ahead, and our town clerk, Sarah Mason, was looking at dates and realized we have a board meeting scheduled for Election Day, November 3rd. Imagine the board will be busy that night assisting in that ballot tabulating. So staff's recommending we look to change that meeting perhaps to the following night, Wednesday the 4th, or another time around there that the board would be comfortable with.
Very good idea. Well, we can figure out an appropriate date in the future, but at least we'll know that we will not be meeting on the November 3rd.
Sure. And that's all I have this evening.
So we're on other business, and other business, we had one member of the board who requested that we discuss the face mask requirements that we discussed about a month and a half ago. And the question is there sentiment among the board members to bring up this subject again next week?
I'd actually like to push to put this out a little bit further. I am incredibly upset and distressed by one of the emails that we received and the threatening nature of it, to the point where I don't want to have this discussion until some time has passed and we're doing this as a group and not being perceived as doing this as a result of a threatening email. And I'm not sure I'm wording this well, but I am so distressed by that. It's not even funny.
So we had the request before that email came in, but I understand your concern. So if there's no disagreement, we will postpone action on this until some future date.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with postponing for a little while. I do want to address it. I was looking at the projections of a second wave of the coronavirus coming through Vermont. And I do want, if an ordinance is going to take some time, and we have the time, and we have the time even to postpone this a little bit. So I don't mind postponing it a bit, but I do want to address it. And I'm not sure which way the issue should be resolved, but if we are going to resolve it in favor of a face mask ordinance for retail or something like that, we need to do that sooner rather than later. And if we're not going to do it, then let's pull the Band-Aid off and be done with it.
Can I make the suggestion that maybe we wait until we've got Jeff present to have the discussion whether we're going to move this forward, and then go from there, Ted? Would that be acceptable?
When's he coming back?
Next week. He's away on a vacation that had no internet, and that's why he couldn't be here this evening.
Right. He'll be here in 2 weeks.
Sure. It may be prudent to at least explore that if we do go forward, what that would look like. So we have a bit of a contour for the discussion. And I don't think we need board action on that.
But I thought the question in front of us is whether we want to even have that additional discussion.
Yeah, and I don't know if we do or not. So I can wait until Jeff comes back.
Gordon, are you all right with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, then we can put this on the agenda as a
thank you, everybody.
Meeting for the next meeting and go forward with that. Is there any other business that we need to take care of before we go into executive session? Hearing none, then a motion would be in order for an executive session.
I'd move to enter into executive session under provisions of VSA Title I, Section 313 to discuss the terms of the town manager contract for Eric Wells, where premature knowledge would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Is there a second? There is a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. We are now in executive session. We'll leave this Zoom area and go to a different one. Thank you, Shirley. Good night.
Good night.
And I'm going to be downstairs in my office if the board has any further questions for me during executive session.
Great. Thank you.